Carl Albert Collins was 21 years old when a Washington County jury found him guilty of capital felony murder. That was 6 years ago. But today, through a series of court appeals, he is still alive and well on death row. Collins's case was a dramatic one. In 1974, he was convicted of the shotgun murder of John W. Welch, an elderly Springdale farmer. The motive for the killing appears to have been robbery. Police say Collins also beat Welch's wife and left her for dead, but she remained conscious long enough to identify Collins by writing his name in her husband's blood. Mrs. Welch survived and later testified against Collins at his trial. Circuit Judge Malin Gibson was a prosecutor in the murder case. Today he said he believes a date for Collins' execution should have been set long ago.
The legislature saw fit to enact a capital punishment statute. And I think if we're going to have it, it should be enforced. If the majority of the people don't want capital punishment, let the legislature abolish it. But if we've got it, it should be enforced the same as any other law.
Gibson and other judges across the state have been somewhat irritated at Governor Bill Clinton for his reluctance to set execution dates for the inmates on death row. Many believe Clinton is personally against capital punishment, but Gibson says the governor's personal feelings, whatever they may be, should not interfere with justice. This is Philip Bruce reporting from Fayetteville for the News People.
In his opening statements before the 7-man, 5-woman jury, prosecuting attorney David Klinger told the court of the events surrounding the murder of Don Lehman. Klinger also told of the subsequent investigation which led to the arrest of the 4 defendants. Charged with 1 count each of capital felony murder and robbery are 30-year-old Darrell Richley, 24-year-old Hoyt Franklin Kleins, 24-year-old James William Holmes, and 22-year-old Michael Orndorff. In their opening statements, attorneys for each of the 4 reminded the jurors that their clients are innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, asking the jury to keep an open mind throughout the entire trial. The first witness to take the stand was Billy Weaver, who testified that he had met Michael Orndorff at a party prior to the murder. According to Weaver, Orndorff was bragging about a number of robberies he'd committed and about one more big job he planned to pull. Once testimony began, the trial progressed slowly, with 1 or more of the defense attorneys objecting to nearly every question asked. Testimony is not expected to move much more quickly in the days ahead. Klinger said it would take at least a week to present the prosecution's case. From Bentonville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People. In her day-long testimony, Vicki Lehman recreated for the jury the series of events which led to her father's death. The 24-year-old daughter of Don Lehman told prosecutor David Klinger how 4 masked men burst into their home on the night of January the 8th, one of them holding her at gunpoint while the other 3 wrestled with and ultimately shot and killed her father. Miss Lehman broke down only momentarily when Klinger showed her a police photograph of the murder scene. During cross-examination this afternoon, defense attorneys tried to discredit her testimony in an attempt to prove that their clients may have committed some crime, but not capital felony murder. Attorney John Jennings, who represents Michael Orndorff, asked for a dismissal of the capital murder charges against his client. Judge William Enfield denied that request. Jennings then moved that testimony pertaining specifically to Orndorff be given separately. Enfield overruled the motion. Prosecutor Klinger has more than 40 witnesses yet to testify. That should place the first defense witness on the stand sometime next week. From Bentonville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People. In his closing arguments this morning, prosecuting attorney David Klinger told the jury that he has proven a cut-and-dried case of capital felony murder against each of the 4 defendants. Charged with capital felony murder and 2 counts each of aggravated robbery are Darrell Richley, Michael Orndorff, Hoyt Kleins, and James William Holmes. Attorneys for the 4 are offering an affirmative defense in which they must prove that 1, their client wasn't the only party involved, 2, their client did not actually pull the trigger, and 3, that their client did not aid or induce the commission of a murder. Prosecutor Klinger, labeling Don Lehman's murder a gross crime, said in court today that, quote, "this affirmative defense stuff is a farce," end quote. Each of the defense attorneys in their closing statements reminded the jurors of their obligation to weigh the evidence against each defendant separately, just as if each were being tried separately. Attorney Paul Davidson, representing Hoyt Klein, dubbed Prosecutor Klinger's presentation as a shotgun approach, telling the jury that neither did his client take part in the planning of the murder, nor was there sufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Hoyt Kleins actually shot Don Lehman. None of the defense attorneys deny that their client was present in the Lehman home the night of January the 8th, but each attorney is asking the jury to consider the lesser charges of first-degree murder and burglary. The fate of the 4 defendants is now in the hands of the 7-man, 5-woman Benton County jury. From Bentonville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People. Miss McDonald lived with defendant Daryl Richley, seen here in the white jacket, for 2 years. She testified about 6 separate armed robberies which Richley had participated in prior to the Lehman murder. Under cross-examination by Richley's attorney, Carol Roddy, Miss McDonald said that she was fully aware that her testimony could cause her former boyfriend to receive the death penalty, but that Daryl Richley had told her on several occasions that he wanted to die and that that decision should be his to make. The remainder of Klinger's witnesses were either the victims of those 6 robberies or were in the vicinity when they took place. Each of the defense attorneys, except those representing Richley, called relatives of their clients who testified as to why the defendants should not be sentenced to die. Mary Holmes, mother of defendant Bill Holmes, and Pam Kleins, the wife of Hoyt Kleins, each pointed out that those defendants' children would, in their opinion, be better off with a father in prison than with no father at all. This is the Benton County Circuit Courtroom. Today very quiet and empty, but last night, the site where 4 Northwest Arkansas men were sentenced to die in the electric chair. Hoyt Franklin Kleins, James William Holmes, Daryl Vernon Richley, and 22-year-old Michael Ray Orndorff were each found guilty of capital felony murder and 2 counts each of aggravated robbery. It was the first time in more than 50 years that a Benton County jury imposed the death penalty. Carol Roddy, who defended Daryl Richley, said today she was not disappointed with the sentence.
I feel, especially here in Northwest Arkansas, with the recent criminal activity that we've had, that people are just saying we're fed up with it and we can't cope with it and we're not going to. I feel it was fair, and I feel that a decision was reached and that it's one that everyone can live with.
Prosecuting attorney David Klinger said each jury reacts differently, but that he was somewhat surprised by the sentence this jury imposed.
Slightly surprised, but very satisfied.
From Bentonville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People.
The evidence is going to show that Paul Muller died of 2 bullet wounds, 2 bullet shots, fired from a .44 caliber weapon.
Prosecutor Kim Smith told the jury this morning that the state's evidence will prove that Billy Gale Henry took part in the murder of Police Chief Paul Muller and that Henry then lied to investigators about the shooting. According to Smith, the prosecution intends to prove that Henry had been friends with Rodney Britton when the 2 men served time in Leavenworth Prison, that Britton had been living with Henry in Mountainburg last winter, and that the 2 men traveled to Fayetteville together the day Paul Muller was killed. Smith said that testimony will also show that Britton robbed a Fayetteville restaurant that night and escaped with $150. When Paul Muller stopped the 2 men in West Fork an hour later, Smith said the evidence will show that Henry distracted the officer's attention so that Britton could shoot Muller. Smith claimed that the crucial evidence in the case was supplied by Paul Muller himself. Before he died, the police chief fired 2 shots, one of which wounded Billy Henry. The key to the prosecution's case will be proving that Henry and Britton were friends and that they acted together. The defense maintains that Henry barely knew the younger man, that Britton attached himself to Henry a week before the murder. Defense attorney Mike Dabney said today that Henry will take the witness stand himself this week and deny that he even knew Britton's full name. According to Dabney's opening statements, Henry will testify that he didn't know that Britton had committed a robbery in Fayetteville and had no idea that Britton intended to kill Muller. Dabney described the defendant as an innocent bystander, a man who had no information to give investigators and who was afraid of being charged with murder himself. In Fayetteville, this is Steve Voorhees reporting for the News People. Prosecutor Kim Smith rested his case at about 10 o'clock this morning after calling some 20 witnesses in an effort to establish a link between Billy Gale Henry and Rodney Britton. Several witnesses testified that they'd seen the men together in Ozark and in Fayetteville before Paul Muller was killed. An official from Leavenworth Prison told the jury that Henry and Britton had been among 130 prisoners living in a cell block at the prison. He said he believed that Henry, who he described as a jailhouse lawyer, knew Rodney Britton. Several police officers later testified that Henry had denied knowing Britton when he was questioned after Muller's death. Defense attorney Mike Dabney countered by calling 3 Leavenworth inmates who all denied that Henry and Britton were friends. The 3 men, all friends of the defendant, said Britton was a homosexual and a Satanist, and that Henry didn't associate with those types. The defendant himself then took the witness stand for more than 2 hours. Henry told the jury that Britton had been camping near his mother's home for about a week before Paul Muller was shot. He said he didn't know Britton's full name, didn't like him, and tried not to be around him. He admitted taking Britton into Fayetteville, but denied taking part in an armed robbery at a local restaurant. Henry said he knew Britton was armed and acting suspiciously, but he said he had no idea his companion planned to kill a police officer. Henry broke down and wept as he described the murder scene, telling the jury, quote, "I didn't want the officer dead. I never fired a gun, never touched a gun." Under cross-examination, prosecutor Kim Smith hammered at several apparent inconsistencies in Henry's story. Henry admitted lying numerous times to police who investigated the crime, but said he was trying to protect himself and not Rodney Britton. Henry insisted that he had not purposely distracted Paul Muller's attention during the traffic stop. In Fayetteville, this is Steve Voorhees reporting for the News People. Billy Gale Henry, who has been acting as his own attorney during the week-long trial, addressed the jury on his own behalf this morning. Henry's closing statement was rambling and often incoherent. He lashed out at prosecutor Kim Smith for calling him a liar and charged that Smith was ignoring important evidence in the case, the character of Rodney Britton. Henry told the jury that Britton was an evil man, a devil worshiper, and he denied doing anything to help Rodney Britton. But the prosecutor kept up his attack on both Henry's closing arguments and his testimony in the case. Smith called Henry's version of the murder a cock and bull story and pointed out several apparent inconsistencies in the testimony. Smith concluded by saying that the crucial evidence in the case was supplied by Paul Muller himself. Smith said that the evidence showed that after Paul Muller was shot, his final actions were to draw his revolver and fire twice at the men who had killed him, Rodney Britton and Billy Gale Henry. Smith asked the jury to finish the job that Paul Muller had started. The 5-man, 7-woman jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning with their verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Billy Gale Henry, guilty of the charge of capital murder. Donald L. Rusty Rose, 4th person.
In Fayetteville, this is Steve Voorhees reporting for the News People. When Billy Gale Henry was found guilty of capital murder last Friday, he told the jury that he wanted the death penalty. Today, before his formal sentencing, Henry presented several oral motions asking Judge Malin Gibson for a new trial. Henry said that the jury had been prejudiced by pretrial publicity and alleged that one juror had made a caustic remark to him during the trial. Henry said the fact that it only took the jury 1 hour to convict him was proof that they were prejudiced. Judge Gibson rejected all of Henry's motions, saying that these issues must be decided by an appeals court. The judge then acted on the jury's recommendation.
Mr. Henry, I will accept the jury's verdict and find you guilty of capital murder in accordance with their finding. And further, in accordance with their recommendation, I will direct that you be delivered to the Arkansas Department of Correction to be held by the superintendent of that department, and then and there on the first day of June 1982 that he caused a current of electricity sufficient to cause death to pass through your body until you are dead. May God have mercy on your Billy Gale Henry.
Under Arkansas law, Henry's sentence will be appealed automatically, but Henry told reporters that he plans to file additional appeals for a new trial. Henry said he didn't regret acting as his own attorney, but said he probably should have asked for a change of venue before his trial started. Henry protested that he is innocent of the charges against him, but said that if he can't get a new trial, he welcomes the death penalty.
Well, I'm perfectly willing to sit in that electric chair on June 1st, 1982. That's the date that's set for me.
In Fayetteville, this is Steve Voorhees reporting for the News People.
On June 23rd of this year, the Farmington branch of the Farmers and Merchants Bank was robbed of nearly $8,300. 5 days later, 29-year-old Ronald D. Springston of Wheeler was arrested and charged with that robbery. In U.S. District Court today, Springston's attorney, Bill Putman, told the 7-woman, 5-man jury that proving his client robbed the bank is the easiest job in the world, but proving he did it willfully, of his own volition, is another matter. Putman contends Springston was under a post-hypnotic suggestion the day he robbed the bank, and that he received that suggestion while attending hypnosis sessions to lose weight. According to Putman, in the course of bolstering Springston's self-confidence, Rogers hypnotist Gene Peters told Springston that he could do anything he wanted, that he could even rob a bank. Each side is expected to call expert witnesses in the field of hypnosis and post-hypnotic suggestion. The trial is expected to take about a week. From Fayetteville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People. Following yesterday's testimony, the prosecution rested its case against 29-year-old Ronald Springston. Today, defense attorney Bill Putman called Springston to the stand. He testified that prior to the robbery, he was suffering from a form of epilepsy for which he did not regularly take his medication. Putman explained that this nervous disorder, coupled with a post-hypnotic suggestion, resulted in Springston's robbing the Farmington Bank.
He was particularly susceptible, and that when the suggestion was made that he was, in fact, intelligent enough, strong-willed enough, whatever, to rob a bank, that this acted as a post-hypnotic suggestion in his subconscious mind and created compulsion, which he just ultimately was unable to resist. He had no choice. He had to do it. We don't suggest for 1 minute that anybody, or any hypnotist can go out and hypnotize anybody and make them do something which is criminal, illegal, immoral, or against their will.
While attorney Putman did talk to the press today, the professional code of ethics prevented him from allowing his client to do likewise.
Springston, I realize these gentlemen are doing their job, but I advise you to make no responses to any questions given to you or made to you by the media. Until this is all over. That'll be a different thing then.
During cross-examination today, defense attorney Bill Putman established that hypnotist Gene Peters does occasionally mention bank robbery to his clients. Peters testified that in order to gain a client's confidence, he tells them that he can't anymore make them do something under hypnosis that they don't want to do, any more than he could make them cross the street and rob a bank. However, he denied ever having said that to Ronald Springston. In fact, says Peters, people don't respond to post-hypnotic suggestions by doing things they wouldn't ordinarily do.
People basically won't do things against their moral or judgment codes. There are some studies that show people have done things, but that was when they maybe had a great association with the hypnotherapist. They might have spent a number of sessions with that person, but nothing that could ever evolve in a session that might last just an hour.
Okay, how many times did Ron Springston see you in a hypnotic?
Just one time.
Peters said in court that he only uses the bank line with women who want to lose weight. At that, attorney Putman produced a tape recording of a hypnosis session Peters had 10 days ago in which he used the bank line with a client who had come to him to quit smoking. The case should go to the jury later this week. From Fayetteville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People.
The drama began at about 5:30 this afternoon, a few hours before the sorority's initiation night was scheduled to begin. According to campus police, the man entered the sorority house carrying a 12-gauge shotgun. He reportedly said he had come to kill some people. According to Tom Posey, assistant director of the university's Department of Public Safety, officers from both the DPS and Fayetteville Police were called to the scene.
3 of the officers came in the house. They came in the house through the front door, and as they came in, this person was on the stairwell. He got the drop on them with the shotgun, was holding them hostage. One of our other officers came in through the back without this person observing his presence. At that time, the individual moved over to the dining area, which was full of people eating. It was folding doors. He kicked the doors open, leveled the shotgun down at the group of people, and that's when he was shot.
We were all eating, and he said he was just here to do what needed to be done, and the DPS somehow got here, and as he started to shoot, as he kicked open our dining room doors and started to shoot, DPS came in and shot him 3 times. And that he just said he came to do what needed to be done, do some shooting.
According to witnesses, James Taylor never fired his weapon, although police say the 12-gauge shotgun was loaded and cocked. Taylor was reportedly shot 3 times in the chest by University Police Sergeant Reggie Hauser. Taylor died a short time later at the emergency room of Washington Regional Medical Center. So far, investigators say they haven't found a real motive for Taylor's actions. The youth reportedly knew one of the sorority co-eds and had talked to members of the sorority about an hour before the shooting. Investigators say Taylor had a history of emotional problems and had apparently been under a great deal of emotional stress in recent months. Originally from North Little Rock, Taylor had reportedly withdrawn from the university after one semester and had been living with his father in Springdale. The Arkansas State Police and Washington County Prosecutor's Office are both investigating the shooting. Sergeant Hauser has been suspended pending the outcome of the investigation, which County Prosecutor Kim Smith says should be completed later this week. In Fayetteville, this is Steve Voorhees reporting for the News People. 34-year-old Dennis Cordes reportedly walked away from the Washington County Jail at about 2:15 this afternoon, triggering a county-wide manhunt. According to County Sheriff Bud Dennis, Cordes was one of a group of prisoners being taken to the jail's outside exercise court. He apparently fell behind the group and left the building when the jailer wasn't looking.
We think he probably just run out the basement here and probably headed north from here, but from after he got a block away, he went every direction, so we don't have anything to go on. The subject is Dennis Cordes. There's no question about who he is. He's about 5'7", 150 pounds, neat appearance, wearing a Western-type shirt and blue jeans.
A car was reported stolen from a Fayetteville home a few minutes after the jailbreak, and police believe Cordes may have been responsible. The car was recovered at a North Fayetteville shopping center about 45 minutes after Cordes disappeared. Officers from Washington and Benton counties, the state police, and Fayetteville and Springdale police departments are all involved in the search, and roadblocks have been set up on all major roads out of the county. Cordes is a Cummins prison inmate who was returned to Washington County today to stand trial on an additional robbery charge. County authorities describe him as dangerous. In Fayetteville, this is Steve Voorhees reporting for the News People. The two-day manhunt ended following a 7-hour stakeout in northwest Washington County. Operating from a command post at the Taneytown Fire Department, Washington County State Police and Springdale police officers maintained an intense surveillance of the area, questioning witnesses who had seen Cordes in and around Elm Springs. State Police Captain Larry Fletcher said the operation began at about 8 o'clock last night, and by 3 a.m. the legwork had paid off.
30 minutes before we actually apprehended him, we developed some good information that perhaps he was in the house, and we went from there.
Police surrounded an Elm Springs residence at 3:30 this morning, ordering the owner out of the house. Moments later, Cordes was discovered hiding in a shed near the building. County Sheriff Bud Dennis describes the scene.
We think he'd probably been there 6 or 8 hours, maybe 10 hours. He was in a little shed building just off the side of the house.
Did he try to escape?
He didn't get a chance to try to escape.
Arrested along with Cordes was 34-year-old Buddy Baird. He was formally arraigned this afternoon on charges of hindering the apprehension of a felon. He is free on $5,000 bond. Cordes was returned to the Washington County Jail under heavy guard at about 4 o'clock this morning, ending his 2-day bid for freedom. He is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence at Cummins Prison. Cordes had been returned to the county Tuesday to face aggravated robbery charges stemming from an incident in April. Additional charges have also been filed in connection with his escape. No new trial dates have been set on those charges. In Fayetteville, this is Steve Voorhees reporting for the News People.
26-year-old Gerald Wayne Steele of Springdale is charged with first-degree murder in connection with the stabbing death of 30-year-old Gary Martin of Fayetteville. Martin was found in front of a Dixon Street nightclub about 4 a.m. last December 27th. He later died in a Fayetteville hospital as the result of multiple stab wounds in the neck and chest. Later that morning, Steele turned himself in to the Springdale police, who returned him to Fayetteville, where he was booked and later released on $25,000 bond. A 4-inch folding knife, purportedly the murder weapon, was later found discarded several blocks from Dixon Street. The slaying was the third on Dixon Street in 18 months and prompted city directors to adopt a controversial 2 a.m. curfew for Fayetteville's private clubs. Steele's attorney, Bill Putman, said today the defense he will offer will be largely based on self-defense. Before Judge Paul Jameson in Washington County Circuit Court, Putman noted his client's prior conviction in California on auto theft charges and asked prospective jurors if they thought someone who has served time deserved a second chance. Testimony in the case is expected to begin tomorrow. From Fayetteville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People. In his opening arguments before the 6-man, 6-woman jury, prosecuting attorney Kim Smith said testimony will show that Gary Martin was unarmed the night he died, that his stabbing death at the hands of Gerald Steele was a cold-blooded killing. Smith told the jury that he thought a justification defense could not be proven. Defense attorney Bill Putman said in his opening statement before Circuit Judge Paul Jamison that Gerald Steele is not a pillar of society, not a fine Christian man, but that neither is he a murderer. Putman continued that the killing was an act of justifiable self-defense and that his client will testify that he remembers thrusting a 4-inch pocket knife at the victim only once. Putman told the jurors that because several of his witnesses had failed to answer a subpoena, what would be heard from the witness stand would be all one-sided. A number of prosecution witnesses testified they saw Martin and Steele arguing and at one point scuffling inside the library club prior to the altercation moving outside, where Martin was fatally wounded. The nightclub's bouncer, Charles Debs, said following one of the arguments which he broke up, Steele told him, "I should have killed him." Debs also testified that it is possible Martin could have armed himself with a beer bottle before leaving the club, but Debs said he saw no evidence of that. Both the accused, Gerald Steele, and the victim, Gary Martin, were described by witnesses as having been the aggressor in a number of altercations that preceded the fatal incident. Defense attorney Bill Putman moved for the bench to direct a verdict of not guilty on the grounds that premeditation had not been proven by the prosecution. Premeditation is a necessary element of a first-degree murder charge. However, Circuit Judge Paul Jamison denied that motion and allowed the trial to proceed. Late this afternoon, one defense witness, Jim Hood, who was also an eyewitness to the fight outside the library club, testified that Martin appeared to be the aggressor from the beginning, that Martin charged Steele, who appeared only to be defending himself as he backed up the sidewalk away from the victim. Hood also testified it appeared from his vantage point that Martin was armed with something. The prosecution alleges that the victim was unarmed at the time of his death. Gerald Steele is expected to take the stand tomorrow in his own defense. From Fayetteville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People. Accused murderer Gerald Wayne Steele took the stand in his own defense this morning to tell his version of the events which led to Gary Martin's death on Dixon Street last December.
I saw Mr. Martin running at me, and he said, "I'm gonna kill you, son of a bitch," and he got on me. I was turning around like this to see him, and I backed up a couple of steps, and he got on me and backed me up against a parking meter or a car or post there, and was hitting me in the back of the head and the back of the shoulders and the back of the neck, and told me that he was going to kill me again.
Under cross-examination, prosecutor Kim Smith had Steele reenact the fight scene with him before the jury. Steele described how Martin had charged him and how he, Steele, feared for his life when some of Martin's friends also approached the fight. It was at that point, Steele said, that he drew his knife.
At that time, I took him to be serious. I reached in my back pocket and took my knife out and held it in front of me like this.
Around 12:30 last night, after deliberating just under 5 hours, the 6-man, 6-woman jury returned a verdict of guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree murder. Gerald Steele had been charged with first-degree murder. The defendant sat silently as the verdict and the recommended sentence of 10 years in prison were read aloud by the court clerk. Afterward, prosecution attorneys said they were pleased with the verdict, but defense attorney Bill Putman, quite expectedly, was disappointed.
Certainly I was disappointed in the verdict. I do not think it was a proper verdict, but I can't quarrel with the jury. They did, I'm sure, the best they could. I have no doubts about the integrity or the validity of their deliberations or anything of the kind. I just think that they misconceive the facts.
Putman added that plans to appeal the case are being made. After the jury was dismissed, there was an hour's delay while the question of Steele's bond was resolved. The original bail bondsman refused to extend bond while Steele awaits formal sentencing. That sentencing is scheduled for May 19th. From Fayetteville, Mike Thomas reporting for the News People.
Thanks again for watching 5 News Plus from wherever you are watching. I'm Darren Bobb reporting for the News People.